This video is powered by BetUS. What would it take for the Chicago Bears to trade for a star pass rusher like Micah Parsons or Myles Garrett? Is this something that is actually viable? Today I'm going to go ahead and talk about it. I already made a video discussing why I believe trading for Myles Garrett didn't make much sense. But every day that passes, more and more people are not only talking about Myles Garrett, but also Maxx Crosby, Micah Parsons, and even Trey Hendrickson. Today, I wanted to go over what it would cost to acquire one of these star pass rushers and why I believe we are better off adding to the defensive line on our own via the NFL draft. The biggest problem with most of these players are the draft capital that it would cost to acquire them. The Browns have already said they wouldn't even trade Myles Garrett for 2 first-round picks. And honestly, that is probably the cost it would take to acquire Maxx Crosby or Micah Parsons as well. We're talking about 2 first-round picks. And to me, it's just common sense. We are finally a franchise that is building through the draft. We finally have extra draft capital, cap space, and a young roster, as well as flexibility going forward. Why would we give all of that up for just one pass rusher, especially when we can draft one on our own? In that retrospect, it really doesn't make a ton of sense to send away multiple valuable draft picks and pay a guy $100+ million. If we trade for one of these star pass rushers, it will not only cost us draft picks, but also limit what we can do in free agency. And to me, we are simply not in a position to sacrifice high draft capital for any of these pass rushers. But now that the Super Bowl's over, we are heading full steam into offseason mode, where BetUS has all of the best odds on offseason props as we head towards the NFL draft. But did you know they also have an online casino? If you like slots or live casino dealers, be sure to take advantage of the amazing 200% sign up bonus up to $5,000. But back to talking about trading for a star pass rusher. To me, like I said, I just simply do not believe we're in a position to do it right now. For it to work out, the teams that are trading these guys would have to significantly lower their asking price or the amount of draft capital they're asking for. But in that regard, there is one player that could potentially make sense. Cincinnati Bengals pass rusher Trey Hendrickson. In the past, I've said I didn't believe Hendrickson would be traded, and for the last 2 years, he wasn't. But now with Jamar Chase being due for a contract extension and T. Higgins headed for free agency, the Bengals are in a much different position. They have also drafted young pass rushers the last couple of years who could be ready to step up and fill in if they traded Hendrickson. They drafted Myles Murphy in the first round, and they also have Cameron Sample and Joseph Asai, among others. I also think the Bengals would trade Hendrickson for less than a first round pick, and that's the key here. If you could get a star pass rusher for potentially just a second rounder, the same we spent to acquire a Montez Sweat, then I might be on board. And while Hendrickson might not be as big of a name as Parsons, Garrett, or Crosby, his production has rivaled the best pass rushers in the game. He had 17 and a half sacks each of the last 2 seasons, and he's quietly been to 4 straight Pro Bowls and is one of the best pass rushers in the entire league. Hendrickson has 13 or more sacks in 4 of the last 5 years and has 70+ sacks over that time span. So let's end the speculation and just go ahead and compare the numbers. Trey Hendrickson side by side with the bigger named pass rushers. Starting with just this last season, Hendrickson led all of these guys in sacks, and he tied for the most pressures. He had more than double the sacks that Maxx Crosby did. His production is unreal. But digging even deeper here, let's go back and look at the stats over the last 3 full seasons. And you'll see that Trey Hendrickson's production has not been a fluke. He has been arguably as productive as any pass rusher in the entire NFL, especially when it comes to producing sacks. He does have slightly less pressures than some of these other big names, but overall, including his play versus the run, Hendrickson has been one of the best defensive ends in the entire NFL. And if you go back over 5 seasons, he's still top of the charts. And I've even included Montez Sweat's stats over this time as well. But to me, it's pretty simple. If we are going to trade for a pass rusher, Trey Hendrickson would be my target. So while everyone else is dreaming of unrealistic trades for Micah Parsons, I think the realistic target is none other than Trey Hendrickson, who was also drafted by the New Orleans Saints and developed by none other than Bears defensive coordinator Dennis Allen. Even more reason why Hendrickson makes sense over these other pass rushers. To me, I get it. Micah Parsons to the Bears would be awesome. Myles Garrett or Maxx Crosby would be force multipliers on this defensive line and really upgrade our pass rush. But they would also cost valuable draft picks and a ton of cap space. Meanwhile, the Rams showed us just last season how you can seriously upgrade a defensive line with just 2 picks in the top 50 of the draft. They took Jared Verse and Braden Fisk and turned their defensive line around after Aaron Donald retired. Those two rookies had a bigger impact than any one player could. And the Bears have 3 picks in the top 50 this year. And on top of that, it's a much deeper and more talented defensive line class than what we saw last season. So I believe that Ryan Poles has put himself in an enviable position to not trade away valuable draft picks just yet. Maybe next year, but I honestly believe the best way to improve this team is by filling holes in free agency and keeping our draft picks. But a dream scenario would be if the Bengals would take a second round pick in 2026, next year's draft, and we could somehow get Trey Hendrickson this year. I'm all in on that trade. But obviously, hitting on our draft picks is the best case scenario. And to me, that is the most important thing to focus on going forward. Ryan Poles has put this franchise in a position to have another huge offseason. Not only do we have draft capital, but we're also going to have probably close to $70 million or more in cap space to continue improving this roster. Cap space, draft picks, and flexibility. The Chicago Bears are ready to turn things around. Thanks to everybody who watches. Please remember to hit that like button for me. Stay tuned. I have a ton more content on the way. Thanks again to BetUS for sponsoring this video. And until next time, bear down.